I set up a lot of different teams, like from scratch um, or like I would be hired to motivate like a dysfunctional team, so uh, it was just like all those things. Throughout all of that, near the end of like before I left the company or whatever happened, the team members would come to me and they would always say, and they still do, like even after, you know, I still meet the people like from 30 years ago,
Mhm.
and they still say that that was the best team that they ever worked in. They grew a lot, they
Mhm.
learned a lot, and they had fun, right? They worked extremely hard. So that, and they used to like, some
Mhm.
of them would come and say, hey, why don't you like go to conferences and present, or why don't you write a book? Who should
Mhm.
I approach for what battles I should fight,
Mhm.
how to organize myself, how to resolve conflict. And all of these characteristics
Mhm.
actually made me become sort of the leader I'm today. About it, what I
Mhm.
realized is like through all the companies that I've worked in,
Mhm.
I was using the same set of sort of thinking around how I set up the team or how I organized it, um, how I worked, which resulted in this kind of environment
Mhm.
that the people appreciated and they thrived in.
When I was
Yeah,
reading
so
your
that's
book,
exactly.
that's the thought that came to my mind, that the applicability of this book is it doesn't discriminate against anybody.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to become a leader, from an individual contributor, irrespective of where they came from, or what their background was, can learn and you know be or adopt a structured approach to reaching that
And
end goal.
yeah,
So,
I realized like how somebody who cares about you
mhm.
can really influence you by giving the right kind of feedback. What I learned is like, like the wrong kind of feedback in this case
Mhm.
can really scar us for a very, very long time. Out was
Mhm.
that people are fearful of being um, perceived as being incompetent a lot of times. And or they could be coming from a culture which says that you have to be self-reliant, you have to figure out solutions on your own, or they may have heard that bring me a solution, don't just bring me a problem.
Mhm.
um, so there are all these different things that hold people back, I feel,
Hi,
right?
viewers. My name is Upesh Jain. Greetings from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the host of the Exec Talk channel, a forum I started to talk to CEOs, executives, and other luminaries about their journeys and distill their experiences and learnings for our viewers' benefit. Today, we have the privilege of talking to Mamta Goyal, an engineer turned leader, a seasoned Valley veteran, and now newly minted author. With an impressive 30-year journey spanning clinical labs, e-commerce, database servers, manufacturing, and nonprofits, Mamta Goyal has emerged as your seasoned guide for navigating the realms of management. With a strong background and foundation encompassing computer science, mathematics, Lean Six Sigma, and agile methodologies, Mamta personally traveled the path from a technical contributor to a leadership role. As she weathered the challenges of school, work, and life's difficulties, she experienced the transformative power of mentorship through periods of growth, mergers, and acquisitions. From manager to senior director roles, and as a consultant, Mamta specializes in building strong, highly functional, and motivated teams in both corporate and startup organizations. Her teams excel at creating internal and external customer satisfaction. The people she managed have all often remarked that hers was the best team they ever worked in. Mamta has developed a leadership style that excels at fostering an environment of creative enthusiasm around a shared purpose. She has distilled and encapsulated these learnings from her book, Discover Your Inner Leader. I'm displaying that on my screen, and I've read through it personally, and we'll talk about it more. Discover Your Inner Leader, from inexperience to influence, 5 focus areas for a new manager. We will, as I said, definitely talk about it in today's conversation, amongst other things. She calls herself a work in progress. In addition to all the above, she loves to read, meditate, make greeting cards, take Peloton classes, and most recently, share her learnings. Mamta, welcome to the Exec Talk channel. And I, for one, am excited to know about your life experiences and your foray into book writing.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, Upesh.
Definitely. So Mamta, let me start about asking you about your early years and influences. Tell me more about that phase of life and how it influenced you.
Yeah, so within the context of leadership, I'll stick to that. I was born and raised in India,
Mm-hmm.
and so a few incidents that come to mind is that in third grade, I was in third grade,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought using foul language was the coolest thing ever. And, like they were the cool students. So I decided to use bad language. And the class monitor one day took me aside and said, hey, like in the future, just think of yourself as these two versions. Like one uses bad language and the other is a person that, pleasant person.
Mm-hmm.
So just that simple statement from her affected me deeply. And like, we look at this, like at third grade, there was this monitor, like she was so amazing. I really looked up to her, respected her. So I took that to heart, and I realized like how somebody who cares about you
Mm-hmm.
can really influence you by giving the right kind of feedback.
Absolutely. And the mechanism of delivery
Yes.
as well. Both the content and the delivery were unique and influenced you in a positive way. So
Yeah.
that's great. Any other things that come to mind?
Yeah. So, and then in ninth grade,
Mm-hmm.
I had an English teacher. She gave us an essay assignment. I misunderstood the assignment. So after she gave the grades, she distributed the grades to everybody else, and then she wanted me to stand up. And then she went on to read the entire essay very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like, I just wanted the ground to open up and I just wanted to disappear into it. I was just so embarrassed and felt like small, like insignificant.
Mm-hmm. So this was,
And
I take it, this was in front of the whole class.
in front of the whole class.
I see.
Um, and what I learned is like, like the wrong kind of feedback in this case
Mm-hmm.
can really scar us for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was really hard to even like look at my friends or like just look at everybody after that incident. And it affected my being able to write
Mm-hmm.
and, do writing in public, like, or, just post things.
Yeah.
So that was like another example, the totally opposite.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You illustrate an important point, right? That not only the feedback, but the way, the mechanism in which it's delivered can make a huge difference in a positive or negative way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say is that like this was the environment that I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would get transferred every 2 to 3 years into a new city,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to change schools,
Mm-hmm.
along with that. So what I learned was like I was a friendly person, but still like it takes effort to, join a new community of students, like they have pre-existing cliques. I want to join them, or I
Mhm.
have to prove my capabilities again and again to people in charge, or adapt to the new surroundings. So what I learned through all of that was that who should I approach for what battles I should fight,
Mhm.
how to organize myself, how to resolve conflict. And all of these characteristics
Mhm.
actually made me become sort of the leader I'm today. And
Mhm.
even then, the teachers also recognized that, and the students as well, I guess. And so I would become the class monitor and team captain in like most of the schools I attended. So
Mm.
sort of like my leadership journey started at
Right.
that point in time.
So, in some ways, what you're saying, and that's my interpretation, is dealing with change is inevitable. But in your case, it was more pronounced because of the nature of your father's job.
Correct.
So you had to, change was in some ways forced upon you, and you had not only adapted to it, but made the most of it.
Yes.
Yeah. That actually, not everybody can do that, right? I mean, people
Yeah.
succumb to it. I mean, finding the new structure and ecosystem, and then, so it's a combination of discovery and adaptability in some ways.
Yeah, so actually you're right in that
Mhm.
like there would be other students who would be in the same boat as we were.
Mhm.
And that's like one of the things I would do is like, if I found some other people like that, like who didn't have friends, I would actually make an effort to
Mhm.
tell the teachers about it, like, hey, these kids are being singled out, that nobody's talking to them. So then the teachers would help out, like, they would say
Mhm.
something in the class in a just sort of nice way that like we should, make friends with other people. And so I would actually go out and try to include them myself also, like in our groups. So that you're right, like, not everybody is, it's not easy for them to
Yeah, is wired to
go
do
out.
that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing you bring out here is proactiveness, right? You can either sit and be a victim,
Yeah,
or you can do something about it.
yes,
And in your case, you chose to be proactive, reach out to people, understand them, and then befriend them. So
yeah.
that's unique and great in a lot of ways. So what were your aspirations as a young adult? Uh, how did you imagine yourself applying what you were studying to real life at that time?
Yeah, so I would say that my favorite subject were math and science, and math in particular. What I really liked is the logical reasoning behind everything.
Hmm.
Um, and I really also wanted to learn a computer science.
Hmm.
But where I was, there weren't too many classes. So I
Okay.
was looking for that, and then I um, got married, and basically why I really wanted to learn, going back, why I really wanted to learn computer science was I wanted to know how they worked, so that I could apply that knowledge to
Hmm.
automate things. Like I had
Hmm.
this fascination with automation even at that time. So I didn't know exactly like how or what I would do, but I really wanted to get into that area.
Yeah, great things begin with curiosity, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it looks like you had the curiosity
Yeah.
and to automate things, and perhaps decrease the labor involved in doing those things,
Yes.
so on and so forth. So
Yes. Exactly. That was it.
cool. So you said you came to the US then, after getting
Yes.
married. So what was your impression? What were some of the key factors uh, that you observed when you came here, and how did you deal with that change? And more importantly, how did that influence your thinking?
Yeah. So that was interesting switch, like from India to here. I mostly lived in small cities in India. Then I came here.
Mhm.
So the first thing that happened was like I didn't actually understand the accents of people,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't understand me,
Mhm.
right? So I watched a lot of TV with lots of sitcoms of different, types of people in them. So I
Right.
could learn all these accents and try to understand, right? Like, so that was interesting. Um, then we also had very little money.
Mhm.
So me and my husband, and we learned to live very frugally and within our means. We made a lot of like really good friends, and we would ask for help from each other. We bought, second, third hand things.
Mhm.
So basically, like learned to live with little resources, but happily,
Mhm.
right? It didn't feel like we were poor or anything,
Mhm.
but it was just the circumstance, environment, and we knew that
Yeah.
we were working towards um, improving ourselves, like we were studying and doing all of those things.
Yeah.
There was also in US, like there was a lot of exposure to lots of different cultures. In India, we were confined to like less of that.
Mhm.
um, in that sense. Like, so we have different types of people from different regions in India, but in the US, you have like from different countries as well.
Right.
So what I really learned was like I learned to appreciate people even more. I always loved people, like meeting them, different cultures and everything, but that just made me
Mhm.
appreciate it even more. Some of the other things that were, kind of like I think of as interesting was that in where I lived, we didn't say sorry or thank you
Mhm.
as much. Like things were just expected from each other. Like if you're helping somebody, you would just help them.
It
Like,
was implicit.
yeah,
Yeah.
implicit, right?
Yeah.
And here, like people would say that, and it actually took me almost a year to even start, feeling comfortable to say those words.
Mhm.
And that just stands out in my mind. But I
Yes.
learned, like, and I started to do that. So through all of this, like it was more the diversity of thoughts, of how people operated, what they thought, that really affected me during that time.
Mhm. So, interesting observations at the
Mhm.
beginning of your, stay in the U.S. I mean, one point I'd like to make, and that's based on some of my observations that kind of tie into yours, is that, even though people are diverse, they come from different races or backgrounds or education or financial levels, their aspirations are the same. They want to achieve in life. They want to have a good family. I mean, give or take, right? I mean,
Yes,
in
yes.
general, that's true. And when I was reading your book, that's the thought that came to my mind, that the applicability of this book is it doesn't discriminate against anybody.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to become a leader, from an individual contributor, irrespective of where they came from or what their background was, can learn and you know be or adopt a structured approach to reaching that end goal.
Yeah,
So
thank you for saying that. That was the exact intent of the book.
yeah.
Yes.
So okay, then you went to school and started a career. So in your early career, what factors or milestones stand out in your opinion, and what made you tick and guide you to where you stand today? I mean, it's a fairly prolific and long career, and without, I'm sure, myriads of ups and downs and different experiences. So if you could touch upon that, that'll be great.
Yeah, so I think I'll be very short in this answer. The So I did my master's first, and then I got my first job in a database company as a customer support engineer.
Mhm.
Um, And it was like this like textbook style relational database system. Um, so my journey actually just started with a great manager.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to deal with like difficult people. First of all, I learned the technology. I read every single
Man.
manual, like, and you would believe, like, they were like this thick.
Mm-hmm.
And I was later told that I was the first person who actually went through every single one of them,
Mm-hmm.
from start to finish. Anyway, so I love technology. So I learned everything I could put my hands on, in that company. And I had the best manager who told me how to deal with like irate customers, like just very interesting ways of dealing with people. Um, I loved all of that. We
Mm-hmm.
had a wonderful team, um, and we did like advanced customer support, right? So that's where I started. And
Mm-hmm.
then throughout my career, even from in the early time, I was just lucky enough to have like really, really good managers and mentors who would look at my strengths and weaknesses and help me get trained
Mm-hmm.
appropriately, right? They paid attention. Um, and my curiosity of, for new technology, the fascination I had to like, systemize the tasks, they would pay attention to all of them. And that's what I learned, that's my takeaway from all of that. Like, it's like if you have a great manager,
Mm-hmm.
you will thrive, right? There's nothing that would stop you from becoming whoever you want to be. And they wanted to know like what I wanted,
I
right?
see.
Um, so that's kind of what I represent as author, coach, trainer, consultant, whatever, role I am in. Um, that whole idea of the team working together, like a manager plays a very important role.
Mm-hmm.
They can almost like make or break your
Make or break.
career.
Yeah, that was the expression I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because, uh, throughout my career, I have been in customer facing roles as well and supporting customers and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, there's what you know, but it's also the understanding of the customer's point of view,
Yes.
right? I mean, if they're irate, why are they irate?
Right.
And, half the time, if you understand them, they'll be more reasonable. So it's a combination of what you know and how you deal with the situation
Right.
in some ways. So, and then having an understanding manager, definitely. It's like they build you up rather than, you know, shoot you down, right?
Yes.
And uh, kind of like that teacher who exposed you in front of the.
Right. So I mean, like, so you can like then be fearful or
Yeah.
you can get over it, right? So that's why like then I went on to like do quality assurance, then DevOps, all kinds of, I pretty much did all
Been there, done
aspects
that.
of software development engineering
Right.
services teams. And that's what increased the breadth of knowledge also,
Mhm.
along with, like you said, um, knowing how the processes work, how we can make them more efficient. And all of that actually requires a lot of understanding people, understanding processes,
Yeah,
you have
and
to network and figure it out.
absolutely. I mean, I read the book and I know the chapters. I don't want to steal your thunder at this point, but because that's my next question as to what led you to thinking about writing a book and what was the impetus and the motivation? And how did you just come up with the idea? I mean, a lot of people say I've worked for a long time, been there, done that. You know, why write a book?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, so I had this hang up about writing, right? However, I would dream about writing.
mhm,
Um, So let me start actually before that.
Okay.
My team members, like when I set up a lot of different teams, like from scratch um, or like I would be hired to motivate like a dysfunctional team, so uh, it was just like all those things. Throughout all of that, near the end of like before I left the company or whatever happened, the team members would come to me and they would always say, and they still do, like even after, you know, I still meet the people like from 30 years ago,
Mhm.
and they still say that that was the best team that they ever worked in. They grew a lot, they
Mhm.
learned a lot, and they had fun, right? They worked extremely hard. So that, and they used to like, some
Mhm.
of them would come and say, hey, why don't you like go to conferences and present, or why don't you write a book?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So at that time I didn't, but then one day I was having a one-on-one,
Mhm.
so things keep building up over time.
Right,
But
right, right.
but one day, like I'm having this one-on-one with a pretty senior person,
Mhm.
and I said, hey, let's talk about like what are your career aspirations. So she just went like silent.
Mhm.
And then after a minute, she said, no one has ever asked me that.
Wow. Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I thought, like, that is just so sad, right? Like that nobody has ever asked like what her career aspirations are. And that's kind of just like I just decided, yes, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
Right? There's something to be said about certain things that all managers really should think about.
So, I take it that when you had these interactions while either building new teams or impacting already existing teams, you probably saw the work you did added value and influenced the team in the right direction. So there were uh, nuggets of these
Yes.
feedback coming from various situations. So probably put something in your mind that, if this approach is benefiting so many people, why not capture it?
Yes. And
Mhm.
so when I started to think about it, what I realized is like through all the companies that I've worked in,
Mhm.
I was using the same set of sort of thinking around how I set up the team or how I organized it, um, how I worked, which resulted in this kind of environment
Mhm.
that the people appreciated and they thrived in. Yeah, so that's exactly right.
Okay. So who was the audience that you were aiming for, and why?
So the people I'm aiming for is like a new manager or a business owner, like who was a technologist before
Mhm.
and now is in a leadership position.
Right.
Um, they are just like, overwhelmed with like just fully booked calendars. They have disgruntled people who are having conflicts, and every single person is landing, like asking for decisions to be made
Mhm.
from their team.
Right.
So they just feel very, very overwhelmed, and
Mhm.
they are desperate to get out of that, and they want the team to do the, do their work.
Mhm.
They want to inspire them and get results. And so I'm actually targeting that person.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the audience you're targeting actually sits at a very precarious position, right? So a lot of the times, technologists have the opinion as to what managers really do, right?
Yeah.
And then one fine day when they're in that boat, they cannot handle it, right? And so I think your book clearly illustrates uh, what it takes to distinguish the forest from the trees. And you talk about corporate mission statements, your identity, the vision, and the
Yeah.
strategy. right? Which are things that upper management typically thinks about of the corporation. And then how to distill that into bite-sized uh, consumable tidbits, if you will, for this newly minted manager to digest and to apply to real world situations, right? So, I mean, that's what I liked about the book. You start with the challenges. I mean, what seems easy is not actually that easy.
Right.
And then how do you break that down into uh, small challenges, right? And the impact you can have in dealing with those challenges, uh, and yet tie into the corporate strategy, right?
Yeah.
So, pretty
Yeah.
interesting stuff there.
Yeah. Like, so, and like, also, like, the thing is, it's a book about leadership, right?
Mhm.
Leadership is such a huge subject.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't do justice in like just so many pages, right? So it was kind of interesting to structure it in in such a way that it doesn't become like this, this huge thing that there's no rhyme or reason to it. So that's why I just went back to like thinking the publisher really helped me with this also. And so I do want to say that like it was great. I had publisher from the get-go. It was
Mhm.
just happen chance that I actually got to meet them. So I'd
Mhm.
like to tell that story.
Okay.
I was just I love attending seminars,
Mhm.
from a lot of, different seminars. That's part of my learning experience.
Mhm.
So I was attending a seminar, and in the one of the breakout time periods,
Mhm.
I was there and somebody said, like, what do you guys want to do? And what's your holdup, right? So I was just like saying, hey, I want to leave my job, like, and I want to just do coaching as a full-time thing.
Mhm.
And just wondering, like, how do you start, right? And then there was this lady sitting there and she said, like, have you ever thought about writing a book?
Mhm.
So I said, yes, I have, but can I just get your, you don't have enough time. So I just got her number from there.
I see.
And then I called her up and like, then we just hit it off and
She
I,
was the publisher?
she was the publisher.
Oh, okay.
And that was like pretty cool, right? Like, so then
Yeah.
I had a talk with her
Stars
and
lining up. Yeah.
yes, yeah, sometimes, they do, right? And then they actually helped me think about the process.
Mhm.
We all have thoughts, like we all want, a lot of us want to write books. So one of the things I would say is like they actually said you need to think of the title first
Mhm.
before you even start, right? So that's just like one of the things that really helps you with the goal
Sure.
and which direction you're wanting to do. And then like, so they had a whole process of doing this.
Mhm.
So which really helped structure the book.
Which is sort of analogous to the corporate mission statement, the
Yes,
title of the book. And
yes.
then, where do you go from there?
Yes, so
And
that
yeah, yeah.
totally ties into it, right?
Right.
And I also believe, like you said, like in the teams, even if you have a smaller team, I see a lot of times like people have identity issues, like like my work has no value,
Mhm.
right? To
Mhm.
get people to feel like, no, your work has total value, right? In the corporate structure. And that's what in each of the teams I worked in, that's the one of the things that I made sure that people understood that their work had value, everything they did had value,
Mhm.
and people that they do actually appreciate it, right? That's
Yep.
how they fit into this whole structure of the organization. And that's where that whole, vision, mission, goal, strategy section comes into picture.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, it's not only understanding the corporation and your role in it and your actions, the impact of your actions in it, but also creating a unique leadership style for yourself. And
Yes.
which you talk about, by the way, in the book in pretty uh, much, a lot of detail. And then what I liked at the end of the book was the peer examples, right? People who went through this journey and in different walks of life and in different domains, and they shared their story. And you could draw parallels between a
Yes.
lot of those.
Yeah.
which is the interesting part, right?
Yeah, so if you really look like, yeah, right, there's like about almost like 8 to 10 peer, section,
yeah.
anecdotes from people.
Mhm.
And then they, like you said, like each of them, you can draw parallels. Some talk about their early days, and it's the same struggles, same challenges that people have, and how they um, encounter them. I
Mhm.
love the parts about like creativity. How do you develop creativity
Mhm.
in your teams? Nowadays, people are so busy doing, sort of like checking off the tasks. Then how do you foster creativity in that environment?
Mhm.
So they talk about that. Um, it's all very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, totally. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the little frameworks you have in each chapter, pretty much, which kind of formalizes the approach, right?
Yes.
I think the main challenge when technical contributors become managers is understanding the abstract stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not 2 + 2 = 4 anymore. There's a lot of abstract stuff and uh, emotional stuff and EQ and emotional intelligence. Actually, you quote the book from Daniel Gorman, right? And
Yeah.
I personally read it. Those are the things that they have to deal with now, team dynamics and organizational behavior. So, I mean, what was your thought process behind the style of the book, right? And the approach in writing the book, because I think that's very helpful. When you have a template, you can fill then and provide a feedback loop from that template and then embellish it and improve it. And, that's always helpful, especially for people with the technical or engineering background.
Yes, it is.
They're used to
So
spreadsheets and
yeah, exactly.
and tables. Yeah.
Yeah, so the thinking behind that, like my book is very people focused, right? That we need people matter in any team, in any organization. And so what can we do? Simple things we can do
Mhm.
to get them recognition, to help them um, take ownership of work, or to, help them grow in their career paths,
Mhm.
right? So some of the examples are like, like what kind of tool you can use or track their one-on-ones. So on the surface, it sounds very simple, right? I have a template for one-on-ones
Mhm.
that you can use to track what happens during a one-on-one.
Right.
So like I said, like if you just look at it from that perspective, it's like, so what about it, right? But the reality is that there is a lot of communication issue that pops up, like even during one-on-ones. Just like actually in the last 2 weeks, I've had multiple people tell me
Mhm.
that they've implemented that one-on-one template, and it's actually helped them resolve so many issues.
Right.
And things like the fact that they thought even employees, right, that the manager didn't know how much work they've put in, right?
Mhm.
Or that they were not aware of all the work they've done, right? And from the manager perspective, it's like, I now feel that I have communicated exactly what I mean
Mhm.
about the tasks,
Right.
right? And
Mhm.
then also like just like seeing all of that on paper, right? Or like in a sheet, right? Like not on paper, right, per se, but like on a thing. It makes people feel satisfied that they are being heard
Yeah.
by the manager, right? And the managers can themselves see like how much work people are putting in. I've even been told, like, sometimes people will say that, hey, my manager didn't even realize that I was putting all this work in,
Mhm.
right? So it helps communicate what's actually happening. People appreciate the work, And then you can use the same thing for like when it comes time to do performance management,
Right.
right? You have all the data already. So you don't have this bias, like the recency bias, when you're actually doing the performance review.
Very
You can see,
objective. Yeah.
yeah, it then becomes a more objective view
Mhm.
of the actual work that got performed because you yourself put in the data there, right? Or you agreed that that data exists,
Mhm.
right? So it just makes life so simple and nothing is a surprise anymore,
Right.
right?
So it is truly a tool or a widget that is assisting in a structured way to
Yeah,
accomplish, what you could have verbally, but it just helps formalize things and track them, because anything that I think is measured improves.
yeah,
And the best way to measure things is to put them in writing. So,
right,
or capture them somehow. So
right.
I think that's what caught my attention for sure. And you're just giving one example. There's many more.
Yeah, so each chapter has like some tools that I talk about, and there are tools that allow people to make decisions. The team then takes ownership. Like there's a mechanism to allow people to delegate things easily, and people know what area that they are owners of, right? So
The
then,
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. Yeah.
yeah. So it just like things like that throughout the book, so that people can utilize them. And I call it like systemizing their processes so that there is consistency. Everybody knows we are following these kind of simple rules, and there's no confusion, right?
Room for
So
ambiguity, right?
yeah, right. So then things start to move, right?
Mhm.
And then we as managers can focus on the people aspects, the emotional intelligence aspects, like what do people want? Where are they stuck? How can I help unblock them? So then we can focus on these other things. The rest starts to um, kind of like follow, like you just start following on those processes.
Absolutely. I also like the one about, how to find your unique leadership style,
Yeah, right, right.
right? Because so the systematic approach to doing that.
Yeah.
So Mamta, what is the role when you were writing the book? What was the role of peers and mentors? You gave the example of the publisher, right? But what was the role of peers and mentors that supported you? And what is the role of peers and mentors in leadership? People are reluctant to take help for themselves normally, and more so engineers and technical contributors. So what advice would you give them? You know, um,
Yeah, I mean, I I did a lot of like leadership courses for
Mhm.
myself, like my self-improvement. And what I realized is like you said about like engineers are reluctant to get help. It's during those sessions, what came out was that people are fearful of being um, perceived as being incompetent a lot of times. And or they could be coming from a culture which says that you have to be self-reliant, you have to figure out solutions on your own, or they may have heard that bring me a solution, don't just bring me a problem.
Mhm.
um, so there are all these different things that hold people back, I feel,
Mhm.
right? And if we somehow get over them, or we have mentors and coaches to guide us, then we start to realize that that fear may not be, it shouldn't like really hold you back. Like it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to ask for advice.
Mhm.
We all go through similar situations,
True.
and nobody like thinks, I should say nobody thinks negatively, but like if you ask the right person, they will mostly guide you and help you, right? You just
especially.
have to have the right set of people to help guide you. And I feel, at least for the career advice, like mentors are and coaches
Mhm.
do a phenomenal job on in helping us get clarity
Right.
and giving us critical feedback.
Yeah, I mean, when I asked you this question just now, I was thinking to myself, I mean, who is a mentor, right? Who
Yeah.
a mentor, I believe, is somebody who's experienced that before, or they might have dealt with a lot of situations. Basically, they're better equipped to deal with the same situation than the new person is. So they're in a position to coach them, guide them, give them help, uh, and that's what you can obviously duke it out yourself and bang your head against the wall and learn those things, or you could have somebody more specialized. It's like going to your doctor, right? I mean, you don't try to treat yourself when you have a situation. You go to an expert. So I think.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to say is like there are two different types of people. Like, so the one is like they are experts in their field and you're asking them for advice, right? And
Mhm,
then there are these coaches who are more like they're trying to help you yourself get clarity, right?
mhm,
So they will ask you probing questions. So there are different types of people, and depending on the situation, you go to that person. For example, for me, I had lots of different types of mentors.
mhm,
Um, Throughout and even now, right? Like, for example, right now I'm working on, you know, my health. And so I have a nutritionist, I have a therapist, I have, like, so you go to different people for different things,
correct.
right? And that's what you have to look for. Like what are we wanting help in or advice and then look for those people and ask for help.
What do you want to get out of it too?
You want to get and you have to use their time wisely, right?
Mm,
These are busy people,
right.
right? So you need to know exactly what you want
You have a
out of that.
silver bullets, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
and also then you have to give them feedback that, what did you do? That's also very important, that you have to get back to them and say, hey, I did this worked for me, or this didn't work for me, like, so you do have to go back to them and make sure you update them on the progress.
fascinating conversation, Mamta. I wish I could spend a lot more time on this, but we have to move it along. So, uh, now that your book is released, how has the post book release experience been, and how has it been received by the intended audience? Uh, any uh, You for sure must be euphoric that your labor of love has come to fruition, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the experience has it's been absolutely amazing.
Hmm.
I feel like I've heard back from people who are utilizing the tools, like you said, in
Hmm.
the different chapters, depending on where they are. Um, the vision and mission, that chapter they've utilized.
Hmm.
I've had people who utilize the, like I said, one-on-one templates, and then the self-growth one, right, that they're working on, finding their own path to
Hmm.
leadership. So I've heard pretty much from every chapter, actually. Like there was somebody who um um they were very busy, like they never thought about giving people free time, and suddenly they are, like it's like, oh, I should think about that, right? Like I just you can't keep dumping tasks on people.
Right.
So it's been amazing, like, and just to see that it's actually working,
Hmm.
and then people are finding value, that's very heartwarming.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Must be a great feeling.
Yes,
Uh,
definitely.
so, what creative work do you have up your sleeve in the future? I'm sure new ideas are coming to your mind now, and or maybe it's too early to ask that question, but I'll ask anyways.
Yeah, so for right now, I have created workshops, sort of in the same structure as the book. So
Mhm,
it's like a series of 6 workshops.
mhm,
It's sort of like a package for I call it the influential manager. I also have another one. It's also a series for Path to a Fulfilling Career, which is more self-exploration.
Mhm.
So the influential manager is for utilizing the tools to, you know, to become a good leader, like basically systemizing your environment and helping people grow. And then Path to a Fulfilling Career is more for individual growth, your own personal growth.
Mhm.
And then I also do on Meetup um, workshops, which are like ad hoc workshops. And I also give, free sessions
Mhm.
over there. So they are like things like active listening. You can actually practice. So I find that like a lot of people will go to seminars and things, but they don't get time to practice anything. So there is a series where I actually have practice, like we practice through these things like active listening, or I'll share things like, how our brain works. So you can remove biases from your thinking, or like, understand like what we may be doing inadvertently. So
Mhm.
there are things like that. So that's kind of the creative part right now. Depending on what people are telling me, I'm creating workshops
Yeah.
and giving them.
So it's a combination of teaching, instruction, giving examples, as well as role play a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely, most of my workshops are always like interactive.
I see. That's great. Mamta, how can people contact you if they want to avail of your knowledge and your experience? And I'll put that information in the interview as well. But real quick, I mean, how can they contact you?
Yeah, so it's Mamta at mamtagoyalcoaching.com. I have a website where all this information is available.
Okay,
It's www.mamtagoyalcoaching.com.
awesome.
Um,
And I'll put this at the bottom of the interview also.
I'm
Okay.
also, one more thing I would like to say is that I'm offering a free assessment. If
Mhm.
you're a manager,
Mhm.
I am offering a free assessment of your team's health and effectiveness if
Mhm.
you buy 10 books and fill out the form on my website.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that's uh, a good incentive.
Yes.
But Mamta, any parting comments for people who are sitting on the fence to take on leadership roles? I think that's a lot of us, or a lot of people.
Yeah, so what I would say is that take the plunge,
Yeah.
right? If you find yourself even a little bit curious,
Mhm.
then do it,
Mhm.
right? It's a learned skill.
Mhm.
You can, with the help of people or training, you can become self-aware, and I would say systemize your work and then try it, right? So there's no harm in trying it. If you don't like it at all, you can always go back to being an individual contributor. Either way is good, but there's no harm in exploring.
Yeah. You don't try, you
Yeah,
never know. Yeah.
yeah. Then we regret it, right? It's like, just try.
Okay. Okay, Mamta, I think we'll have to kind of conclude this, even though we could go on for hours talking about this. But Mamta, I want to wish you the best of luck for your book and in your coaching and consulting career. Having read the book and having been part of high tech for a long time, I can see the applicability of your treatise to individuals who aspire to be leaders but are confused or reluctant to take that first step. It's a great read and an easy read. So there's nothing complex or hard about the book, and can be a lifetime reference for whenever you have questions during your leadership journey. So I really appreciate the time you took, and I'm sure my viewers will benefit tremendously. Take care, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Upesh.